And now it's Brawn time. I'm finally taking a look at Studio Series 86 Brawn, a figure I actually owned back in 2023 and then sold off and kind of regretted it and ended up getting him back very recently, actually, when Diana and I were on a little outing for our 20th wedding anniversary. Yes, we have been married, not together, married for 20 years now. Well, more than 20 years by the time I'm recording it, it's already more than 20 years. By the time this is out, it's going to be even more. But yeah, found this guy and have him again, and now I'm going to make a video because I didn't realize until I brought him home that I never actually made a video on Studio Series 86 Brawn. And I have zero nostalgic connection to Brawn. I had the Hunt for the Decepticons or Revenge of the Fallen or whatever one it was, the movie-verse Brawn, that I actually thought was a pretty darn cool figure. And that was kind of the only Brawn I had for a while. But he was neat. Then I got Studio Series Bumblebee Brawn, who will be coming back for a proper size comparison later, and I still love this guy. He is RC, I think, is going to just always be the best one, but he is a very close second/third. It depends on how I'm feeling between him and Ratchet, because I also absolutely love that Ratchet. But love that Brawn, and now there's this Brawn. And I have even less of an automatic connection and fondness to 86 Brawn than I do the Bumblebee movie Brawn and the Revenge of the Fallen one. Why is this not sitting quite right? But despite that, this is a really cool figure, and I'm very happy to have it because it is very cool. It does a lot of neat things. I'm not entirely sure why this roof section doesn't seem to want to sit quite right, but I guess I should stop messing around with it and just keep talking about the figure. So he is his little Jeep thing. There's a really decent amount of paint all the way around in this thing with the rims, the front section, and then the bumper is now in orange. The lights, whatever these are, in kind of silver. And then they did the light blue for the windows going all the way around except the back. It's not the worst thing, but it is a little bit annoying that you've got this really nice blue all around here, and then in the back it's just like, nope, we didn't bother. I get it. It's the rear windshield. I would much rather this without this than, just these windows and nothing back here, or not the windows at all. Or even worse, have this be translucent plastic that they tried to paint green or olive, whatever this is. So yeah, nice decent amount of paint for the most part. There's a ton of paint in robot mode, like this, and I mean ton in the just volume wise, because this whole chest section is painted, which is kind of weird, but it's probably like a remold intention thing or something, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, his vehicle mode looks a little bit awkward because there's this kind of gap going on down here. And around back, it's mostly hinges, and then you've just got this panel kind of covering things up awkwardly. But I don't mind any of that. I think this looks cool. And the only thing that is a little bit of a bummer to me with the vehicle mode is he's got a second set of lights in the front that have no paint, so they're easy to miss. But So yeah, he is cool. And also, they did the thing. They used the same type of connection for all of the tires. It really bugs the crap out of me when they do what they did with Burnout here, where you've got pinned wheels in the back and then clipped wheels in the front. I hate that. It sets off the part of my brain that gets annoyed by things that are asymmetrical when they're supposed to be symmetrical. I don't mind asymmetry. Like the lines on animated Bumblebee, who we used for a comparison in the last video. I don't mind that. I don't mind asymmetry. But when it comes to stuff like this, that kind of asymmetry bugs the crap out of me. But yeah, I like that they're all clipped. But even though they're clipped, he still rolls pretty darn well. And yeah, for weapon storage, as you can see, he's got his gun stored on the top there. It just plugs in along with the tire, and the tire also plugs in. I guess if you really wanted to, you could do that. And I can't remember, can you do... No, you can't plug it in like that. Can you plug it in this way? No, you can't. So yeah, this comes out and looks awkward, so I just like to leave that up there with the gun. Unfortunately, you can't really store the gun anywhere else. There's just no room for it. Like back here, there's not really enough room for the gun to sit. If we try and put this back here, this isn't going to go down all the way. And it can't really fit in here either because of stuff that gets jammed in here. At least I'm pretty sure it can't. And yeah, so you don't really have the kind of budget gun storage that Studio Series 86B has, Bumblebee, but it's fine. This is fine. Like this I find less bothersome, especially when you've got a smaller weapon like this, than awkwardly clipping a gun to like the back of a vehicle mode. And even then, it's not terrible. As long as it can store and it doesn't get in the way of things, I'm generally fine with it. And may as well get this out of the way now. You can plug in a blast effect to the gun, and it does the thing. And because the gun isn't painted, you can actually leave this on with less worry about things getting damaged, because I mentioned that in the Bumblebee video. When the pieces that you're plugging the blast effects into or over are painted, if you leave them in there too long, it will start taking off paint when you remove them. So something to consider. Now, I think that's all I can say about the vehicle mode. It is a cute little box Jeep van thing and very Brawn, and not the kind of vehicle that I'd be like, yeah, I want to drive one of those, but it looks as it should. Is kind of the best I could say. So anyway, let's bring in our size comparisons. There's Dinobot and Ova Prime, and we need to zoom out and raise this up a bit more. There we go. And there's Samus. Samus, here he is with the standard size comparison crew. Get all of them out of there. Bring in Burnout for that modern deluxe comparison. And much like Studio Series 86 Bumblebee, Studio Series 86 Brawn is a little bit on the small side when compared to other modern deluxes. It's not that bad. And again, I feel like what's going on here is more complex than what's going on here. So it kind of makes sense that he might be a little smaller, and also scale. But yeah, he is in vehicle mode and in robot mode, but we'll get to that later, a little bit smaller than your average deluxe. And since we saw it before, bring back Studio Series Bumblebee Movie Brawn, and let's get him undrilled and weaponed. You can see that is how they measure up there. We've got Jeep and Bubble Thing. I still love this vehicle mode. Yes, he's got this open toilet seat at the top that you can see the robot head through. I don't care. I still think this is neat, and the transformation is really cool. And this guy does have Reaper labels on, so he does look a little bit different than he would out of the box. So there is that. And finally, here is Brawn with the duck tank. Now, before we turn this into a boxy robot, if you like this video or any of the other videos that I've done and you would like to support the channel, I have a Ko-fi or Patreon, links to both at the end of this video as well as down in the description. Otherwise, I always appreciate the typical YouTube support stuff of liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing. Now to transform Brawn, we're going to just do the Brawn transformation. You all have probably seen this already. I'm going to do it anyway. So, to take this flap and fold it all the way back, it actually goes over this little tab here and over this tab back here. So that kind of sits over these bits here. So fold this all the way back. And for some reason, in the one that I used to have, this didn't catch the way it does, but here it just kind of wants to stay like that. I'm kind of wondering if something got thrown off in the mold, but it does go all the way back. This piece untabs, pardon, it untabs from the these pieces here. So this whole canopy section untabs, and there you see tab. There's the little slot that pegs into, and this can just come straight up like that. Now, Going to untab the front wheel wells, and they tab in a few places, including right here. There's this little orange piece sticking out here, and that's painted. So yeah, there's that. But this untabs, and then you can bring this out. This will pull out this chunk too, and this can swing out. And this is, you can kind of see there's really not room in there for the gun to sit. But bring this out, and then I'm gonna bring this piece, this leg, down, because there's a little tab on the back of the leg here that actually sits in a little notch on the fist right up there. It doesn't peg in solidly, it's more like a guide, but just bring that down so it's not in the fist anymore. And then this swings the rest of the way around. This piece swings around, and there is there's a tab here that tabs in here, and this little catch will go inside will kind of go over, like inside the little wheel well there, and that kind of helps to lock everything together and keep this from wiggling around. With that done, you can fold out the foot, and we'll just kind of leave this back for now. Same deal here. On this side, I'm going to untab this, bring it out, bring it down, rotate this down a little bit, and bring this down the rest of the way. Swing this up and around, and tab everything into place. Open up the foot, and there I've got legs. For the upper body, going to take this panel here and... Actually, no, we're going to leave that. What we're going to do is take the arms and separate them. They peg together at the shoulder and at the forearms. So you want to untab them. And once they're untabbed, you can then rotate these panels down. Not all the way, but you can rotate them down to get things kind of out of the way. Now, to finish all this up, I'm going to raise the camera a little bit for one thing. I'm going to hold this piece down, take the entire front section of the Jeep and rotate it 180 degrees. And there's just enough space for it to squeeze in here past all of this stuff. Now these can come in all the way. You kind of want to raise this little orange piece up as you do it. So this comes in all the way. This swings back, and there's this little nub right here that will go over this little circular cutout in the joint there, and then this little hook-shaped piece for the orange piece here will sit into this little cavity right back here. So that comes up and kind of thunks in place, and that does actually lock the arm in pretty well. With that done, you can fold out the fist, bring the arm down, and rotate it out so it's in the proper positioning. Same deal here, just kind of bring that up a bit, swing this in, swing this up, and kind of show it from this angle how it goes around this little nub and then pegs into that little spot back there. Okay, it doesn't peg in, it just... this whole time I thought it pegged. It doesn't peg, it's mostly the nub that holds it in place, but it does kind of hook over the hinge. So, my bad, it doesn't tab in, but it does thunk in really nicely. And then pull out the fist, rotate the bicep. There we go. And bring this up. And I rotate the head 180 degrees for the vehicle mode transformation, because there is actually clearance. You can see the face is not touching this. I do that because I just don't want the head peering out from the bottom of the vehicle mode. You don't have to, but since I did rotate it, I'm going to rotate the head back around. And then this folds up, and there are these little tabs in here, like these two tabs here that kind of sit into these pieces here. And it kind of locks the torso together. It's not super secure. It's very easy to get that unseated, but it's not like it doesn't flop out or anything. So there's that. Then I'm going to just raise this piece up, and it doesn't like clip in or anything like that. It just kind of sits, and it's really easy to bump back like that. But you get the back piece accordion up like that, and then rotate the waist 180 degrees, and there we have Studio Series 86 Brawn as a robot. And he is a somewhat awkward and chunky looking boy, but like that's kind of his whole deal. I don't mind it at all. I prefer the Bumblebee movie aesthetic for Brawn, but this is still neat. And it is an interesting and cool transformation this guy has. Like here you can kind of see too how this armature, like it just doesn't, I just don't see why this doesn't tab into place anywhere, you know? Like there's a tab here that sits inside of this strut, and that kind of keeps that in place, but there's nothing to keep this portion of the hinge in place. So this can settle in just fine, but like this is a problem. But it is what it is. So yeah, it either sits like that or gets pushed in. Yeah, he looks good. I appreciate that there is more color on display here in this mode. Like you get the silver for the forearms now. And you do get some other details like the thighs, the arms in their entirety, the chest and all that. But like the legs are, at least the shins, are all stuff that you saw in vehicle mode. I think it's cool too how the wheels double up in the backs of the calves. He's relatively clean. This, I do, again, wish this could have folded up more, maybe even like rotated 180 degrees and folded up and around like closer to the back. But it's a small complaint with everything else going on with this guy. You do also get some nice molded details revealed on what are now the insides, or what used to be the insides of the vehicle mode wheel wells, but you get these details now because they're the outsides of his legs. And that is cool. So yeah, the chest section, this is all one big piece of painted plastic. You can see that this is actually this kind of olive color, and they painted the entire freaking thing orange. So that is a lot of paint all over this thing. And it's not terrible, it's just kind of, I don't know, I guess the only, I mean, as I'm looking at this guy, the only orange plastic that they used is the kind of stronger nylon-y stuff. So I guess they just didn't want to make the chest out of that stuff, or room on the molds, I don't know. Purely theoretical, but there is no other molded orange plastic in like this kind of plastic, so I guess it makes sense that they wanted to use this kind of plastic for the chest, but they didn't want to, didn't want to use this, and they only had this kind of plastic in like green, so that's what they went with. Yep, he does look neat for what he is. I think Bumblebee Movie 1 is neater, but there's a lot of nice molded details all over this guy. But he still does the 86 movie thing. You know, he still hits all the right design elements. And the head is definitively Brawn. He looks like a kind of a tank shell crossed with a bonbon for a helmet. It's just this big gray dome that looks extremely nondescript, but also weirdly elegant in a way. There's a lot of these little molded details that just add a little bit of interest to the head that would otherwise be kind of dull, because I think, if I remember correctly in the cartoon, there wasn't a whole lot going on with the head shape. It was more just kind of like he was just wearing a dome over his head and that was it. The face is also cool. I kind of like that they gave him this sort of slightly more etched and grizzled look. I mean, he was grizzled before, but like just something about the way that those cheek lines go all the way down to his jaw. like they kind of point down, but then this little element goes all the way down. There's something about that I think is neat. He looks grumpy, which I think is pretty right for Brawn, right? I think. And the colors are great too. Like the gray, it's the only place that gray shows up, and it really works for the head. And like this silver next to that gray looks great. Blue eyes stand out really nicely, and all of this kind of sitting inside of the orange looks great too. And I will say, since the orange is painted, it actually works because this orange is also painted, so this is all like green plastic with orange paint on it, so you don't have to worry as much about color matching. I mean, it doesn't match what's going on here, but in terms of like how it frames the head, there's no distracting, like majorly distracting color difference between the oranges, which works well. And also, Autobot logo, because he had one on his hood, which I didn't mention this in vehicle mode, but yeah, that Autobot logo, it's big and prominent, but also the tone of the red matches the olive color a little too closely, so it looks a little bit muddy. But here it stands out really nicely. And it is not centered. I'm looking at that now, and it is 100% not centered. Oh well. But yeah, that is it for the head and the chest, apparently. The articulation. Okay, so the head does rotate, as you saw during the transformation. It can rotate 160 degrees. It's just a swivel, but it does rotate. And the reason I'm doing this is because when this is in place, it makes rotating the head a lot more difficult. Also, there's not really enough space to rotate the head this far. The side of the helmet kind of knocks into this piece. You can kind of see how this piece is sticking out a bit. So it's just easier to pull this forward a bit and rotate the head that way. But the head can go pretty decently to the side without crashing into that thing back there. So you get a decent amount of head articulation in that regard. But if you don't really care about this being plugged in all the way, you can kind of fudge it. So you get head rotation, you get ball-jointed shoulders. You don't get enough room for any real meaningful butterfly motion, but they can go all the way around, and they can go out a little bit past 90. You get bicep swivels. You got elbows that can bend well past 90, and that's not even for the transformation. You don't have to bend the elbows for the transformation. And now I'm noticing there's a scratch there. A little scratch on the paint. I can't win. You don't get any wrist rotation, but you can bend the wrists in if you want, I guess. You get waist rotation that can go all the way around, and as long as this shell piece is back where it's supposed to be, the rotation isn't really hindered. If this is pushed in, then it's going to get in the way of the waist rotation, but it also just hinges out of the way when you move it. The hips can go forward to just under 90, and then with the shell in the way, that's about as far back as they're going to go because things are bumping in back here. But if you get this kind of back and out of the way, you can bend it back further. It looks a little silly from the side, but you can do it. To go out to the side can actually go past 90. You get a thigh rotation, and you also get a knee that bends just a little bit shy of 90, just because of how everything comes together back here and tabs together and the way the leg is shaped. And the size of the mushroom peg, I think, meant that this had to be a little bit thicker back here, so they couldn't like carve a shape in for it to bend more, but it's almost 90. And then for the foot, you do also get really significant ankle tilts, and then you can also bend the toe down or bend the heel down. Can't really bend the toe up. It goes up ever so slightly, but that's just like, it's not a intended articulation point, I don't believe. I guess if you really wanted to, you could push it and stress the plastic. So you could do that. So yeah, pretty decently posable, which I think is kind of funny, seeing as how he just looks like a box. A vaguely humanoid-shaped box. Alright, now, for his weapon. It is a simple looking little blaster thing. I don't know if this is accurate to the show or not. I also don't care, but it does the job. And you can, of course, keep it plugged into his back here if you want. Or you can put it in his hand. And that's where I like to keep it. This piece, though, like, I'm fine with it being removable. It just kind of stinks that you can't really do anything else with it. Like, you can't even really plug it into his hand. I guess you could plug it in like that. It was just holding it. But you can't, like, there's no peg holes for it to go on to, like, as like a buckler or anything like that. So it's pretty much just keep it back there and pretend it doesn't come out. So, yep, there is Brawn. Now let's do our size comparisons here. Bring in Dinobots. Those hips. Dinobots. Oviprime. And Samus. So here is all this together. And yeah, Brawn is a little bit on the short side when compared to a tall Voyager and the equivalent of a tall Deluxe. But he is taller than an Amiibo, so he's got that going for him. And when compared to Burnout, he is still noticeably shorter than Burnout. Which, again, like, the height differences for this kind of stuff never really bothers me that much. But it's a thing, so he is shorter. But again, I will maintain he is a more complex figure in terms of engineering and parts count and all that than Burnout is, or the Skids mold. And since we looked at him before, here is Bumblebee movie Brawn. And of the two of them, I still prefer this guy over this guy, just because I really like the aesthetic and the really interesting way that this guy transforms. But at the same time, when you think about how these two work, like, I'm not going to do the transformation of this guy. If you want, I have a video on this guy on the channel already. You can check that out. I'm going to try to remember to link to it up there. But it's interesting because it's not something I really thought about until just now. But, like, the way they transform is different. But where the parts end up is weirdly very similar. Like, for both of these figures, the legs end up becoming the sides of the car. Like, front to back, the legs are the sides of the car. The torso is like the front and back of the car. The arms tuck up behind the body and end up sitting inside, like, the cab section of the vehicle. Like, it's just, there's a lot of similarities in how these guys, like, the broad strokes of their transformations. As I said, they're not the same, but it's just really interesting how they both have, like, a similar approach to the transformation, but handle it completely differently. This is something I realized that I thought was kind of neat. And also, yes, Bumblebee Brawn is a little bit shorter. I don't care. I still really like this guy. And finally, we got to do our most important size comparison of all. Here is Studio Series 86 Brawn with the duck tank. And that's it for Brawn. He is a weird little guy, but I do like him. It's unfortunate that I can't seem to ever get one that doesn't have some kind of unfortunate paint scratching. So I believe the original one that I had for this guy, it's been a while, but I'm pretty sure I remember him having a scratch on his chest, which really stunk. And now this one has that scratch on the forearm, which is less obvious than if it were a scratch on the chest, but it's still just like, eh. And I'm also now wondering, is that stress or just shiny plastic? I think that's just shiny plastic. It's really hard to tell. Thought I saw stress on the pin for that leg, but I don't know. Anyway, he's cool. He is a cool guy. As someone who is not a huge Brawn fan, I still think he's neat and worth having because the transformation is interesting and both modes, for what they are, look interesting. But for my money, if it comes down to if you got to have a Brawn, I'd go with the Bumblebee movie one because it's just my favorite. But that's just me. Also, I forgot I was going to show this off. You can do the G1 mode with this guy if you really want. I find turning the head around 180 degrees works here too, but basically the G1 mode is just de-transform him slightly, and it makes him look like his awkward G1 figure that was like 70% leg. I guess if you also wanted to, you could do this to make it even more awkward. Get those arms like really low and out of the way. It looks bad, but it also doesn't, weirdly. It doesn't stand like this because the way these are shaped, it makes him lean back. But still, it is pretty funny that you can do stuff like this with this guy. But yeah, that has been it for Studio Series 86 Brawn. What are your thoughts on this fellow? And or how he compares to other figures? It's really whatever you want to talk about as it pertains to Brawn. Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching. And normally I don't, I stopped doing teasers for future videos a while back, but I kind of feel like I should for this one because it's kind of a big deal. Well, big-ish, especially for me. So, just give you a little hint of what to look forward to next time. See you all then.